So let's face it, Community had a less than perfect ending. Although the legacy of the show was largely positive, it's hard to talk about it without acknowledging the severe drop-off in quality after Season 3. And if you're a Community veteran, then you don't need me to tell you this, but Season 4 was the first season of the show without its creator Dan Harmon behind the camera. And while it has its moments, Season 4 is definitely the worst season of the show. Harmon returned for Season 5, and the show was picked up by Yahoo Streaming for its 6th and final season. And if this is the first time you've ever heard of Yahoo Streaming, then you are not alone. But yes, you could say that the show ended with at least some of its dignity intact, but it's clear to see that the magic of seasons 1 through 3 was lost after the great tragedy of season 4. Now, I'm here to tell you that the quality of seasons 5 and 6 really isn't all that bad. Where the first seasons made me laugh out loud maybe 5 or 6 times per episode, the last seasons would get maybe 3 laughs out of me, plus 1 sharp exhale through my nose. So the drop-off is there, but hey, at least I'm still laughing. No, I'm here to tell you that the real problem with seasons 5 and 6 is how they're set up, which ultimately led to a disappointing ending. So yes, despite the fact that I can enjoy the last season of Community, I just don't like the way that it ends. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the big problem that I had with this ending, how it hurts the comedy of the show, and how I think the show should have ended. But before we get into it, I want to address something that I think is really important. This is the first video on the channel describing why I don't like something, or how I would fix something. And you see this type of video all over YouTube. You know, videos explaining why a movie is garbage, or how to fix a movie. And there's nothing wrong with these videos, but I think it's important to acknowledge that hindsight is always 20/20. It is so easy to watch a movie that's less than perfect and identify its problems and possible fixes. Anybody can do that. But if I were tasked with writing the last season of Community, there's no way that I could have come up with something even remotely as good as what we got. Because creating something out of thin air will always be harder than fixing something that's already been made, in the context of film anyway. So when I say that Community should have ended a certain way, I'm not saying that I'm a better writer than the people that actually wrote it. I'm just saying that given what we actually got, now that we've had some time to think about it, I think that it could have been improved. And again, it's always easy to see these flaws after the fact. So with that being said, here is how Community should have ended.
What do you think?
To Jeff.
To Jeffrey.
Okay, so I'm just messing with you, but what I'm trying to say here is that Community probably should have just ended after season 4 because, well, that's when all the characters graduate from Greendale, and supposedly after that they do this thing called moving on with their lives. But like with most other TV shows, even after a clear, natural ending point, the show must go on. And it's not the worst thing in the world that there are more seasons after 4, but the show would never be the same after that because it hinges so heavy on our main characters being students at Greendale, and without that element, things just don't feel right. And that's part of what I would call the biggest flaw of the last 2 seasons. The fact that our characters weren't actually students at Greendale anymore. But before we get into that, a quick 25-second recap of how the show actually ended. Season 5 picks up with Jeff being a failed lawyer after graduating from Greendale. He makes his way back to Greendale in an effort to sue the school, but after running into his old friends, they all decide to stick around in the form of a Save Greendale committee. Jeff is so broke that he's forced into taking a job as a teacher of law at Greendale, and for 2 seasons, the group takes on a number of tasks to help improve the school, and by the last episode, everyone has gone their separate ways except for Britta and Jeff, who presumably will be a teacher at Greendale for years to come. The end. So like I said earlier, Greendale is a key ingredient to what we know as Community, so it's understandable that in order for there to be more seasons of the show, they somehow had to bring the characters back to Greendale. And again, ideally there wouldn't be any more seasons of the show after they graduated so that you wouldn't have to force them back there somehow, but here we are. Now, as I thought about how I would structure this video, I considered taking it character by character, you know, going through their different endings. But then I realized that I actually like all the endings that we got for our main characters, with one glaring exception. And that is the ending that we got for Jeff Winger. So there are 2 main components to the end of Jeff's story that just really rubbed me the wrong way, and we're going to talk about both of them really quick. Number 1, Jeff not returning to law. So as I mentioned, after Jeff graduates from Greendale, he's unsuccessful in becoming a lawyer again and eventually settles for a job teaching law at Greendale, despite his hatred for it. And to me at least, Jeff comes off as kind of a loser with this ending. But that's not what bothers me about it. I mean, not every ending needs wealth and success to be a happy one. But it seems like we're forgetting one tiny yet ever so important detail about Jeff. He was an incredibly talented lawyer. Throughout the show, on countless occasions, maybe even multiple times per episode, Jeff uses this insane talent of convincing people to give him what he wants, to stretch the truth and to make something crazy seem normal. And how many times has he given an inspirational speech to rally the group back together after a hard day? Also, just take a look at this episode when we get to see all the people that Jeff used to work with. They love and respect him because he was so good at being a lawyer. And he did all this with a falsified college degree, so he must have been just naturally talented. I mean, just imagine if he actually put in the work to perfect his craft. Yet the series ends with him not practicing law, which I guess could be fine as long as he's still at least using his talent, but nope. All he does is slack off when he's supposed to be teaching his class. And I realize that this is all in tune with Jeff's character, but I was hoping that by the end of the series he would have evolved past this. I really hate to see Jeff not living up to his potential, especially when he's clearly not happy about it most of the time. The second component that I didn't like about Jeff's ending is probably going to be a little more controversial, but Jeff and Annie should have been together by the end of the show. I mean, it only makes perfect sense, and it seems like the show had been building up to that, but in the end, Annie moves away, leaving Jeff sad and alone. So why do I think that they should have ended up together? Well, apart from having great chemistry throughout the entire show, they balance each other out perfectly. Jeff can be lazy, selfish, and also just a bad person sometimes. But throughout the show, Annie acts as his moral compass, his conscience. And by the end of the show, he's a much better person because of Annie's effect. Likewise, Annie has a very uptight and rigid personality, but Jeff is the one who teaches her how to loosen up and have some fun every once in a while. If you want to see a good example of what I'm talking about, just watch the debate episode from season 1. In the first debate, they fail horribly because Jeff refused to actually try and because Annie was reading off cards like a robot. Annie teaches Jeff to give a crap, and Jeff teaches Annie to go off script every once in a while. To sum it all up, they need each other. They continually bring out the best in each other, yet for some reason, they don't end up together. And again, it's not like characters have to end up with someone at the end of their story for it to be a good story, but they had built their relationship so well, and it just seemed like a natural conclusion. But back to the topic at hand, now that we've talked about the problems with the actual ending, we can finally start talking about my hypothetical ending. And obviously, if it were up to me, we could have ended the show with the full original cast. Troy especially was one of my favorite characters, and his absence is definitely noticed in the final seasons. But it is what it is, and the ending I'm about to pitch here is assuming that we still have to deal with Pierce, Troy, and Shirley having left the show. So, I like how season 5 starts, with Jeff having trouble getting back into the swing of things being a lawyer. Also, I like the idea that what brings Jeff back to Greendale is a lawsuit for him to be a part of. But here's where the first change I would make comes in. In the actual season 5, Jeff decides to not be a part of the case against the school, which is good because we don't want to see Jeff sue the school. But I would change this lawsuit a little bit. Put Jeff on the side of Greendale as their defense or something. This gives Jeff an excuse to be hanging around Greendale. It also allows him to practice what he's good at, and if he nails the case, then it could be what officially gets him back out and into the game as a lawyer. So there, we've already solved a number of problems, but we still need to get the rest of the gang back to Greendale as well, so how do we do that? Well, it doesn't have to be too different from what actually happened. Just have the rest of the gang return back to Greendale to help support the defense of the school. After all, we know how much they all care about the place. So in a way, they still are the Save Greendale committee, and most of the episodes from seasons 5 and 6 could play out in the same way. The only difference would be that Jeff wouldn't be there as a teacher, he would be there as the head of the defense for Greendale. And along with performing tasks to help better the school, they would probably be gathering evidence to help defend the school as well. To throw in a classic community twist, you could have them slowly uncover that the lawsuit was set up by community college or something, and there was some deep conspiracy or something like that. And season 6 ends with them completely exonerating Greendale and Jeff back on top of his game. Okay, so we've solved one of my 2 problems that I mentioned earlier. So what do we do about the Annie of it all?
Talking about the Annie of it all.
Well, we basically don't have to do anything. Like I said, all of the Jeff and Annie stuff is already there. They just didn't capitalize on it in the final episode. You would just need to slightly modify some things here and there. As I mentioned, I like Annie's ending of moving away to do forensics with the FBI. It suits her really well, and we definitely don't want to take that away. But at the same time, it might be a little much to have Jeff move away with her. You could still have her go away for the summer on her internship, but maybe as the last scene, skip forward a few months and show Annie returning from DC. And having been away from each other for so long, Jeff and Annie realize how much they like each other, and they finally decide to give their relationship a legitimate shot. So you can see the changes that I'm pitching here won't exactly affect the moment-to-moment comedy of the show, but just the overall story. And I feel like this would give you a much different feeling after watching that last episode. You would have closure knowing that Greendale has played its part in each of their lives and that they're all ready to move on and begin pursuing their dreams. But also you'd be happy to know that the group still kind of lives on in the form of Jeff and Annie, who would be together. And in my opinion, those are the two things that you have to balance when you're ending a sitcom like Community. You need to provide closure so that the audience knows that the main story is over, but you also need to provide hope for the future of the characters. Hope that they'll one day get what they want, or that they'll continue having these crazy adventures. You know, basically just a happily ever after type situation. The real ending that we got just didn't do this for me. I didn't like the fact that Jeff accepts his fate as a teacher at Greendale despite having no passion for it. I feel like I needed to see the main characters move on from Greendale, not stick around until the end of time. And again, most of the characters have hopeful endings that I liked, except for that of Jeff. But with all that being said, I still think there's a slight chance that the 6 seasons and a movie prophecy will come true sometime soon, and we'll actually see a Community movie with the original cast returning. And if that happens, then I really do think that we'll end up seeing an ending that's closer to what I've described here in this video. At the very least, Jeff and Annie better get together, because if they don't, we riot. Alright guys, so that wraps things up for this video. I know that there are a lot of Community fans out there watching this, and I'm really curious to see what you guys think of this ending. Let me know down below, do you agree with my hypothetical ending, and if not, how would you have it end? Like I said, ending a TV show is so hard to do, so I'm interested in hearing what other ways you guys think they could have done it. If you enjoyed this video, you can hit like, you can subscribe to the channel for more content, and you can also follow me over on Twitter for any channel updates. As always, thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.